All right.
Live, YouTube live.
All right, y'all. All right, so we are live and direct. This is Drs. Ken and Tin, and today we're going to be talking about COVID-19 vaccinations. So the two of us have already gotten it, and we posted our experience on Instagram and received several responses and comments as to why we did it hurt, what was it like, all the way to you're now unfollowed. I can't believe you did it. You're a sellout.
Yes.
So we just want to discuss with you guys kind of why we did it, what we were thinking in the process, and answer some questions that people have sent us. So, Dr. Ken, why'd you get that vaccine?
Yeah, so I just got mine yesterday, you guys. And as a physician, I got it because of what I've seen. So I saw a lot of bad things that are happening to people and families during COVID. And it's sad how some people have COVID. You can't even have family members in the hospital. And I've delivered premature babies because of the COVID vaccine. I've known personal people that have family members or parents die from it. So I'm getting it as a physician because I do not want to risk giving it to you guys, to patients that I see in the office or patients I see in the hospital. And I'm getting it personally because my family, I have a lot of people who are high risk in my family, and I have a new baby. And even though a lot of kids don't get it, but I just don't want Heart to be a part of that small percentage that gets it. So that's why I got it. And I also got it because, the science, and Britton will talk more about this, Dr. Britton, we're not starting from scratch when it comes to vaccination. So it's not like, it's something new. So the risk and benefits, that's what I weighed. And the benefits in my position definitely outweighed the risk.
Yeah. All right. Well, I can just tell you from my experience, it's very similar to what Dr. Kendra just said. You want to protect everyone around you. So whether it be your patients, your family, your friends, yourself, you just want that protection because I think we are scientifically minded. We have read literature. We look at the studies and the research, and it isn't scary for us. We understand a lot of the language. And so, vaccinations are new. The vaccine that they created, though, very quickly, still is based on the foundations, the principles of vaccinations from the early 1900s. So, to me, it wasn't a scary thing to do. The medication, the ingredient list wasn't anything out of the ordinary. So I didn't really feel like I had any really strong opposing views of why not to get it. It was more of why would I not get it? It didn't really make much sense for me to not get it. I mean,
right.
I wasn't afraid of any crazy reaction. I wasn't afraid of growing a third eyeball. I think my concerns really lie in whether it's effective and for how long. So that's really my fear about it, not kind of that other stuff like, oh, you're being guinea pigs, because I've kind of accepted that, yes, I am a guinea pig, but I'm being a guinea pig for the advancement of science. And I'm willing to take that title. I have no problem with it because I want to be part of the solution. And if you're not being part of the solution, then you're really just kind of doing nothing. I mean, that's how I see it. There are some people who shouldn't get it, and that's fine. Right. But for those of us who can get it, particularly those who are on the front lines, I'm a phase 1A personnel because I'm an anesthesiologist. So I was first in line to get the vaccine. Why would I not get it? There's no real reason not to. And I wanted to be part of history, part of that solution of, helping propel science forward so that, in 5-10 years, maybe they'll have a better vaccination for the same disease, but at least they know based on what I did, the contribution that I made. So it was important to me.
But I think that that's a good point that Dr. Britton made, is that, we can make decisions about this faster because it's our field. So, and that's why we're doing this YouTube live, is because I could imagine if I didn't even know what the word messenger RNA is, if I didn't remember that from high school or whatever, that this is all foreign language. And so we're not here to promote you getting the vaccination. We're here to present facts and what we do know and tell you what we don't know. And based on all the information, you guys make the best decision for yourself.
Precisely. So I think that we're just going to start off answering a lot of the questions that people have sent to us individually or on Doctors Ken and 10. We're just going to kind of read off the questions and them how we researched it or from our own experience. So I'll start with the first question, very benign question. And that one was, what are the side effects of getting the vaccine? So I can tell you my experience and I can tell you what's in the books. So for me, I experienced a sore arm the day after I had the vaccine. That lasted 2 days and then that's it. I feel fine. I don't feel anything else.
Yeah.
Huh?
I'll say, okay, another day of the sore arm I could expect. Okay.
Yeah. So I had 2 days. So this is your first day out. So tomorrow, your last day. Yeah, it hurts to lift it. That deltoid muscle, dog. It's like you can't go over that.
This is when it's like, ouch.
That's that deltoid. That's that deltoid kicking in. So yes, 2 days and I was fine. My arm didn't hurt. But some more common side effects would be obviously pain at the site or soreness of the muscle. You can have redness at the site, swelling. It can feel hard or lumpy. People have gotten more systemic side effects like fevers, chills, headaches, nausea, vomiting, things like that are more common. Definitely not serious. The biggest worry we have is anaphylaxis, and that's where your body's immune system overreacts to the antigen that it was presented. So we want the body to have a response, but not over and beyond what it should. And when it does that, you can go into anaphylactic shock where your blood pressure drops, your heart rate, goes up tremendously, your organs shut down. So that's what we're worried about. So after you get the vaccine, you will sit there for about 15 minutes for the provider to watch you. If you have a history of having had anaphylaxis to any other vaccines in the past, you'll sit there for a little bit longer, for 30 minutes. But those are the more common side effects. And again, we've only seen, I think, 4 cases in the world so far, 2 in UK, 2 in America, that have had anaphylaxis. So out of the thousands of people that have been vaccinated so far, it's looking pretty good. No one's died from the vaccine, and certainly no one's grown a third eye. So we're looking good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
A question coming is, if you already had COVID-19, should you get it, the vaccine? And do you want the vaccine? And they tell you to wait like 3 months because that's what they've seen in the studies of patients who've already had it, they've been hospitalized, that the antibodies can last from 3 to 6 or 7 months. So we're going with 3 months. So yes, you should still get it because we don't know how much of an immune response that you develop getting it on your own.
Yeah. And we don't really know how long that immunity lasts. Like you said, I mean, from what they've seen from patients that have had prior exposure, they've seen that within 90 days after the first exposure, no one has really gotten reinfected. So they believe that at least a solid 90 days, you do have immunity after you've been infected the first time. So we know at least 3 months. Yeah. But with the vaccine, they have been testing to see kind of how long we have antibodies for it. And they've seen as short as 3 months, and they've seen it out 5 to 7 months. You still have antibodies from the vaccine. So it does look like the vaccine is very promising in keeping a little bit of a long-term immunity. However, we've only studied this for 8 or 9 months. So we just don't have the information yet to know how long immunity lasts from the vaccine. Or even from the initial disease itself. We just don't have enough time and enough data. So as days and months and years move on, we'll have that information. But as of yet, it looks like 90 days for a natural infection and about 5 to 7 months for the vaccine. So yeah, we don't know if it's going to be more of a booster thing that you get it every 6 months, or if it'll mutate like the flu and you'll have to get a new one every year, an annual thing. So right now, we just don't know. We're just kind of seeing how it all pans out.
But that goes on to another question where people ask, can you get it twice? And so the antibodies can disappear as little as 3 months. So yes, you can get it again. So that's why the vaccine is something that you should look into, especially to me, if you already had it once.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the questions I did see was if you're immunocompromised, with HIV or cancer or whatever, should you get the vaccine. To be honest, they haven't really put out any information, yes or no, you should or shouldn't get it if you're immunocompromised. What they have said is obviously talk to your doctor and have that conversation with that person. But in general, because you're immunocompromised, they don't know really what your immune response will be. Will it be enough? Will it not be anything at all? Or will it be, something severe as anaphylaxis? They just don't really know because there's not enough data for it. So for people who are immunocompromised, talk to your doctor. I think in general, if you don't have any contraindications, meaning you're not allergic to anything within the vaccine in the ingredient list, and you're at high risk for getting COVID because, worker or the type of work you do, or you work at a nursing home, those things will have to be weighed against, the risk of you potentially having like an anaphylactic shock.
Exactly.
So yeah, talk to your doctor because they'll be the ones that know you personally and know what your situation is.
I think that answers the question that people had. What happens if your body rejects the COVID vaccination? I think that goes along to what Dr. Britton already talked about. The worst reaction is your body shutting down, anaphylaxis. So that's the worst that could happen, of course, death. But that's the worst that could happen. It could lead to death.
It has not happened. Just so you know, it has not happened yet where anyone's died from the vaccine. There have been, like we said, reported cases of anaphylaxis, but because they were still within the facility when it happened, because they were being observed, they were able to treat it in time. So that is why they keep you there afterwards. Oh, Kendra, tell them what the ingredients are, just so they'll know what's actually in the vaccine.
Yes. So what's in the vaccine is the messenger RNA, okay, which is, we all have it. It's in our DNA. And the messenger RNA is to instruct the body on what to build and what to make. And with that, they have different proteins, okay? So they have something that is a protein that's lipophilic, meaning that it can get into your cells, pass through lipids. And this does not go into your nucleus, which is where all the stuff, the popping stuff is that makes, us pop. It doesn't go there. So I just want to make that clear because a lot of us are thinking out there that, oh, is this going to, change my germline, change my genetics? It doesn't even do that. So that's why it's like, I was quick to get it because understanding the role of messenger RNA. And so just think about this, that they have to take the content that they want your body to get, surround it by something that your body recognizes so it can get into the cell. And then it creates, it tells your cells to make proteins that look like COVID-19. And they developed a certain amount. They instructed the messenger RNA so you can develop a strong response. So you can have a good antibody response. Then your body says, I don't like this protein that looks like COVID-19, and you develop your army. And that is when some of us can get side effects of it and we could feel sick. Why? Because our body is working. Our immune system works. Yes, and you get your antibody response.
And just so you know, like the mRNA cannot go in and change your DNA, just like you said. The mRNA doesn't change DNA. DNA creates mRNA. And the mRNA does not go into the nucleus. The other thing is mRNA degrades very quickly. So once the mRNA, I think 72 hours, that's as long as it stays.
So here are the instructions.
Yeah, is exactly. So
okay, that's more reassuring being that I received the vaccination.
It totally gets degraded.
Okay.
So the mRNA, right. The mRNA has the recipe and it goes into that cell and it goes into the ribosomes and makes that protein. But then it dies. It degrades. It doesn't. The mRNA ceases to exist. And that is why it's wrapped in that little lipid, the fat bubble, because it's very, very unstable. It'll degrade like that. So that fat bubble protects it.
I should have a strong antibody response because I have a lot of lipids up in here.
So lipids basically
my body reaction. I expect to be immune to COVID-19, y'all. Okay.
So yeah, that lipid not only protects it and keeps it stabilized, but it also allows it to get into the cell because the cell's outer rim is also lipids. So lipids likes like.
Like. That's right. You know,
So
I was
lipid allow another lipid inside. So
ivory. Yes. Okay. Okay.
oh, and the other part of the vaccine is sugar, salt. Is sugar and salt,
And that
right?
all sounds harmless, Britton. That don't sound
All the
like
ingredients are things that we've used before in other vaccines and medications. None of the ingredients are really out of the ordinary. The only thing that's different is that mRNA that's created from amino acids, which we have in our body already.
right.
Amino acids. That's an inside joke. That's an inside joke. Amino acids.
Okay, but do you see how like this is sounding less scary and scary?
Yeah.
Like I didn't hear anything. You know, we use makeup, we use hair products, weed killer that has cancerous things we can't even pronounce. We use that on an everyday basis. So again, this live is not about saying, hey, get the COVID vaccination, but it's to educate. Let's be informed. If you're going to say no to something, know what you're saying no to.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Someone asked, is it mandatory to take it? No, me and Britton, you know, no one said that you have to take it or you lose your job. But is it highly inferred? Yes, it is, because being a healthcare worker, you know, being part of the 1A group, okay, we could infect people with the virus. And you come to the hospital to get well, you do not come to get sicker. And there's been lots of studies, even for ICU patients that are in the ICU for other reasons. They got the COVID vaccine, they got the COVID virus by the caregivers, the nurse. Yeah. So that's why, you know, our nurses are probably even the first to get vaccinated because they are with the patients longer. So yeah, so that's why we are, what is it? It's incentivized to get vaccinated, but it's not mandatory.
However, it is mandatory in the military, we've learned.
I know.
Having been in the military, when they tell you to do something, you have no freedom to do what you want. You do have to do it. When I went to Iraq, there was a litany of vaccinations we had to have. And
really?
Yeah, and they were mandatory. You had to get them. Yep.
Because in China, from my understanding, it's mandatory to get COVID-19. So there is no choice. So it's interesting how the military is mandating that. Like somebody else looks at the risk, benefits, and alternatives for you. And if you meet a certain qualification, meaning that you don't have any contraindications from getting the vaccine, or if you don't have a doctor's note, then you get it. So
in the military, unless you have a contraindication, which means a medical reason why you cannot have it, you have to get it. So unless you have that, it's mandatory.
One was okay. Go ahead, honey.
No, I was just saying, but not for us civilians. It's not mandatory.
One of the side effects that made it to the news was the Bell's palsy. I think about 4 patients got Bell's palsy, and I want to let everybody know that anybody can get Bell's palsy. It can be idiopathic, okay, meaning that from no reason at all, you can be sitting at home and suddenly you get facial paralysis. And it is self-limiting, meaning that it goes away on its own. It's different for everybody. Some people goes away in a month. Some people it takes 2 months to go back to complete normalcy. You can also get Bell's palsy through medication. Pregnancy can sometimes bring it on, or certain viruses you get can give you Bell's palsy. So yes, that is a side effect. Is it something like Britton's saying out of the ordinary? No, it's not. This is, some people get Bell's palsy off of getting the flu shot, you know. So for the thousands that have been vaccinated, only, you know, less than 4 people got Bell's palsy. That's pretty good.
Yeah. One question that was that circulated a lot. People ask the question a lot: how long does the immunity last with a vaccine? Did we already talk about this? I feel like
no, we didn't. Not here.
Because we discussed it so much, I can't remember where we discussed it. How long does the immunity last with the vaccine? And the answer is we need to collect more data. We just don't know. It's, you know, what we can say is that the vaccine has been shown to be safe and effective. So the safety profile is pretty good. No one's died from the vaccine. And efficacy measured by the fact that you do have antibodies that are now circulating in your system that will protect you from the disease, or at least lessen the symptoms. So those are the two things that we know for sure. We don't really know how long it'll last. Again, the studies are ongoing and will be for the next years coming up, but we do know at least there have been immunity shown at markers 5 and 7 months. So that's
good.
But we, again, we just don't know how long it's going to last. We just don't know.
A question here is a news question about Australia has banned the vaccine. So I just wanted to kind of clarify for those who don't know, because I didn't know myself that Australia had their own vaccine. But the vaccine that they banned wasn't the Pfizer vaccine that me and Dr. Britton have received. It is from their own vaccine, just like how China developed their own vaccination. France, America has ours. Australia had theirs. And the reason why they stopped producing and giving it out is because one of the proteins that they used, so the COVID virus, the messenger RNA can enter the cells, it mimicked a protein in HIV. So they're getting a lot of false positive HIV results. And I could just imagine being that person. They call you up and say you got HIV, and you're like, whoa, what? So they stopped it. And what's going on now is that they're actually looking at Pfizer's vaccine and putting it through their own clinical trials. So things like that, when you read in comments or you read on the internet that Australia, it has banned a vaccine, and to think that it's Pfizer or Moderna, I was scared too. So I think it's really important to clarify when we hear stories like this.
I think that's the biggest thing. When you hear any of these stories, you have got to look into it. And not just read the title and then just go off and start to get nervous.
I was like,
right. You don't want to spread misinformation. You don't want to get nervous. You really have to dig deep and really find out, well, what exactly are they talking about? Because there's always a deeper story to it. And on that note, one of the questions I did get was, what's the difference between the vaccines that we have available to us in America? So there's the Pfizer and the Moderna. And those two vaccines do the same thing ultimately, but they do use different substances, different sugars, different lipids. And because of those substances that are a little bit different, it does require different storage techniques for the two. So Pfizer, you have to store at a much lower temperature than the Moderna. And because of that, Pfizer is probably going to be relocated to major medical institutions, teaching hospitals, academic centers, whereas the Moderna is probably going to be to more remote locations, small community hospitals out in, suburban areas.
Right.
Just because, those communities don't really have the technology to hold or to house a Pfizer product that needs to be at negative 75 degrees Celsius.
Yeah,
so because of that difference, it's going to determine where the distribution of those two vaccines get sent. But in general, they do the same thing, but their ingredients are a little bit different. So, the difference would be, you're using Splenda and I'm using regular sugar, right? Both sugars, but different kinds. Splenda versus Sweet and Low. So that's kind of like the analogy that I like to use. Ingredients are a little bit different, but they are the same result. So those are the two differences between them. One of the other differences I forgot to mention was the age difference in which you can get these two vaccines. Pfizer is only right. So Pfizer is only approved for teenagers 16 and older, and Moderna is approved for 18 and older. However, they do have clinical trials going on right now between the ages of 12 and 17. But right now, you have to be 16 for Pfizer, 18 for Moderna, and that is what it is. Both of them do have 2 doses, and the Pfizer is 21 days apart, and the Moderna is 28 days apart. So that's another, small difference between the two.
And the effectiveness is similar. So Pfizer is 95% effective, and Moderna is 94.5%. So similar.
Yeah, very, very similar. Similar efficacy. Let's see. What other questions have people been asking?
Can you get the flu shot and COVID? Yes, you can. So you can get both vaccinations. And I encourage you, especially if you're not going to get the COVID vaccine, If you know for sure, no matter what, that you're not going to get it, then I really encourage you to get the flu vaccine.
Tell them about the patient you had. That's important. That's a good story to hear.
So I had a patient who was pregnant, and she had COVID-19 and she had influenza, the flu. So she ended up delivering prematurely. She was very sick. The good news is that the baby did not get COVID-19. So they're finding that babies are actually getting the antibodies from the mothers who've had COVID-19, but they're not getting the virus itself. So that's good news. And a side note, children, really small kids, babies, really can't get COVID-19. Some can, and it's due to that babies don't have enough enzymes to create like a doorway for the virus to enter. So that is why they're finding out why more kids are spared. It doesn't mean that kids can get it, but less likely to get it and less likely get severe disease. So that's reassuring that the mothers that are COVID positive are delivering babies that are negative for COVID.
What do you recommend for pregnant women? Do you tell them that they should or shouldn't get the vaccine?
Yeah, so I personally, so right now, so the rules that I follow as a practicing OBGYN in America, right now they're leaving it open to the patient and the doctor. So discussion, because you got to know your medical background as far as, any medical conditions that would exclude you from getting COVID-19, how high risk of a pregnancy you are. So there's a lot of factors. But if you're healthy and COVID is rampant in your community, like if you're living in LA City, different county, LA County is higher than San Bernardino, for instance. And so all things being equal, healthy, I do recommend a pregnant woman, especially if she's an essential worker, works in healthcare or an essential worker, to get the COVID-19 vaccination. And if you're lactating, if you're breastfeeding, you can also still get the vaccine. And the most simple answer that Britain's already heard is that messenger RNA does not cross the placenta. That is why some medications you can take during pregnancy and some you cannot. So that is a very most simplistic way to make you guys understand, those who are not in the medical field, that messenger RNA, it can't get to the baby. It's too big of a molecule to pass through. But what does pass through are the antibodies. The antibodies are small enough for the baby to get the antibodies. So that's why we always encourage you, get the flu vaccine so your baby can get the antibodies. Get the Tdap for tetanus, diphtheria, pertussis. Get that so your baby can come out with an immune system that's not starting at zero. So same thing with the COVID-19.
Wow, that's good. Breastfeeding as well?
Breastfeeding as well. Okay. But the antibodies can cross into the breast milk to your baby. So breastfeeding is just, good on multiple levels, and also, antibodies for COVID-19.
Okay. Let's see, another question. Why is it that people can become reinfected with COVID-19 if they've already had it and supposedly have the immunity from it? Well, that's because we just don't know how long you retain that immunity. So like the flu, it might mutate and you have to get the vaccine once a year, or maybe the immunity just doesn't last long enough and we'll have to get boosters and stuff like that. We just don't know how long the immunity from the actual virus, we just don't know how long it lasts. There have been studies that show when you have had the virus, if you had a small or a mild reaction or symptoms, you probably have a low amount of antibody in your blood. And they also found on the flip side that if you had a very serious reaction where you were hospitalized, intubated, that you totally exhaust your immune system, and that immune system is not able to create immune memory for that virus.
Wow. So that's what makes this virus so difficult. It doesn't react, to what common sense. It doesn't react like any other virus that we had in the past.
Yeah. So while you think that, I had a huge response to it, I was in the ICU, you overwhelm yeah, you overwhelmed your system, and the system wasn't even able to create that memory of B cells and T cells so that you can fight it a second time. So those patients have been shown in these few studies to have very low levels of antibody as well, just like the people who had very mild
That,
symptoms.
that
So
is the
yeah, and so that's why you can become reinfected, just because we just don't know how long that immunity lasts. We have seen, though, that 90 days is pretty much as far out as that immunity will take you from having the actual disease. But we have seen with studies that the vaccine is lasting what appears to be a little bit longer, 5 to 7 months. But again, these are all small studies. They're
right.
not very long. They're not long-term studies because, again, we've only had this virus for less than a year, and we've only been studying it clinically through trials for what, eight months. So it's really hard to say right now. Everything is flux, and we get new information turned over day to day, week to week, month to month. So everything is ongoing, but that's in essence why you can be reinfected, is just because we just don't know how long that immunity lasts, or how severe or how much of a response you had initially to know that your antibodies are going to last a little bit longer. We don't know that yet, but time will tell.
And one question that kind of, it just goes with what Dr. Britton was saying, was a lot of questions about, people are weary of this because it seemed like they put the vaccine together really fast. And so one thing I do want that you guys to know and make clear right now today is that no steps as far as in the medical part of creating this vaccine and then putting it through the clinical trials. None of that, there were no shortcuts to that. All those steps were taken just like any other situation that we weren't in a pandemic. The only difference is that they lifted a lot of the laws and the regulations and the money part, like, who you have to pay to do this and that. So that was lifted. And so that is why this got out to us and why me and Dr. Britton have already had our vaccinations. Okay, so none of the medical part was compromised. It was just the political money bureaucracy part.
Right, correct. And actually Pfizer actually is not even taking any money. So they did not take any money from the government because they specifically said they didn't want this to be a political issue. So Pfizer has put up the money, they fronted the cost, they're just getting the vaccine out, and they'll worry about, I guess, the money later, or that's what they said. So that was what they put out into the media, that they've not accepted any money from the government. This is all on their dime because they didn't want to turn this into a political issue. So,
and that is how it got it out to us so fast. You see, so that is a big pandemic.
Yeah, they didn't have to go through all the red tape. And it is there was a question about, and Kendra, you can probably chime in, that these companies are exempt from being sued from the public. So you can go ahead.
Reassuring, like as a consumer, as a person that has received the vaccine or should receive it, thinking on the fence about it, hearing that is not reassuring that these Pfizer can't be sued. And, it's due to immunity. And I know me and Brent, we just kind of looked this up ourselves. And I know in the UK, the government is protecting Pfizer. I think that's what we read. Because this falls under.
I'm not sure if it's Pfizer. It's whatever the UK's equivalent company is. I don't know if they use Pfizer. Don't quote me on that part.
Right. But they're allowing a protection because this is under an emergency situation. And it's almost like, Dr. Britton was, her example she used earlier was giving chest compressions, and, chest compressions, it hurts. And if you're really doing it, you can crack ribs. And then the person laying on the floor ends up suing you, a person who essentially saved their life for doing CPR, but a side effect can be cracked ribs. So, and I know in America, Britton, do you remember what you read about that we actually have a law?
So I think it's a law that America has. It's a law that I think came into effect maybe in 2005, the PREP Act. And it essentially says that in any kind of pandemic or emergency healthcare crisis, companies are exempt from civil lawsuits should anything go wrong with whatever treatment they've created to help with that health crisis. And this falls into that, obviously. And it's part of the law. And, you can say that, well, why would they want to be protected? They must be hiding something. But again, we scientists, researchers are doing the best that they can, and in a short amount of time. And so, maybe there are reactions that they don't know about because they've not had a chance to study it. But that doesn't mean that, the product they're putting out isn't worth putting it out now to hopefully save some lives. You have to weigh the risk benefit ratio, which we talk about a lot. But again, it's just like, in healthcare, we've had situations. I've personally known of situations where people have been sued for giving chest compressions, effective chest compressions that saved a life. Yeah, the person went back and sued them for cracking their ribs. So it's one of those things where, I'm trying to help you out. There are some side effects that could happen, but the bigger picture is your life is spared. And so I think that's why that law came to be, and it makes total sense. I don't find it suspicious. But, there are some people that do, and I try to use that analogy so that they kind of understand, like, well, this is something that we face as physicians, with the CPR situation. So kind of apply that to a situation with this pandemic. Maybe there will be some side effects. Maybe somebody will have an anaphylactic reaction, but the bigger picture is it can save millions of lives. Not that one life that doesn't get spared isn't worth, we don't want to say that they're not worth it. They certainly are, but there may be side effects, and that's all that we're saying. So,
and I also think, and I know it's called immunity lawsuits. So I know that a lot of these lawsuits are also to protect from, remember I told you guys that the reason why the vaccine is out to us so fast is because they lifted a lot of laws and regulations. So I think that the immunity, not being able to get charged for things are more for the incidentals, meaning, for example, if a woman was having a baby in the street or something, and I see it, and I see that nobody's around to catch the baby or whatever, and I push someone out the way, that person falls, maybe breaks their wrist, and I go ahead and deliver this baby, okay, and I save the day. So maybe that person could sue me because I was in an emergency. So I think a lot of these laws that America has and the UK just put in are for incidental things, like, maybe not the actual vaccine with the patient getting it, but other stuff that how did they get it to us? Did they follow all the rules? Did they pay people appropriately? just those kind of things.
Yeah. And I think if you think about it, you bankrupt these companies that are creating these major advancements in vaccines and technology, you bankrupt them with all these lawsuits, then there'll be no one to help fight these viruses in the future. Like you
can sue anybody for anything these days. Yeah. Literally, all you need is representation.
Right. But the point is they're doing all the steps, but they don't have a lot of that red tape that slows things up.
And Britton, you being from Chicago, one of somebody on my IG let me know that a Chicago hospital has stopped all of the Pfizer vaccinations because the adverse effects were so bad. And why are we giving it here in California? Why are we still pushing for it? What's going on in Chicago?
This was a Chicago area hospital. I don't think it was in the city of Chicago, but certainly close enough to be considered. They had 4 patients that had an adverse reaction. Well, once I kind of did a deep dive to see what that reaction was, sounded like 3 of them had tingling in their arm at the site of infection, and the other one, they didn't say exactly. Well, which sounds normal, right? I mean, that could be normal, a side effect. And then the 4th person, they didn't really specify exactly what the reaction was, but that they're still being watched at the hospital. But nothing severe. No one's been intubated. No one's on a vent, no one's organs are failing. It sounds just kind of like because they had 4 people with an adverse reaction, they just kind of wanted to put the pause on and say, okay, let's just stop for a second, look into it. The rest of the Chicago hospitals are still in full effect, still giving the vaccine. And out of the thousands of people that have received it thus far in the Chicagoland area, just those 4 people have had what are considered adverse reactions. Certainly doesn't sound severe. The 3 people with the tingling arm are fine. There's no sequelae from it. And, again, that could be, you got to look into it. And I don't know exactly because I wasn't there, but, maybe the injector hit a nerve.
Right.
That could have caused it. right? Or maybe there was swelling at the site and it caused tingling where the nerves are. Yeah, I just don't really know to the extent of the adverse reaction, but it didn't sound very serious as a medical professional. And certainly everyone in the area, they're still getting the vaccine and there's not been any other cases. But with that incident, yeah, just those 3 people, they're fine. And the fourth person, I don't know what the symptoms were, but it didn't sound anaphylactic. They didn't mention that, at least they didn't say it was, but they're still observing that person in the hospital.
Okay, so it sounds good that, you know, nobody has died from it because 4 is too many at their hospital for now. Another question, so after you get the vaccination, do you still have to wear a mask, Dr. Britton?
Absolutely.
I know.
So here's the point that we didn't discuss earlier. Your immunity doesn't build up for a few weeks after the vaccination. So, and actually, after the first vaccine, there was some studies that show that you did have 119 days. But again, small trials, small patient population in that study. But they've said that, you know, it takes after the second dose, which is 21 days after the first, or even 28 days. So that's 3 to 4 weeks right there. You don't build up a solid immunity for a few weeks after that second dose. So you're still able to catch the virus for at least 4-6 weeks, right? There's still some weeks in there where you're still able to catch that virus. So you still have to practice proper PPE, just like you did before: a mask, social distancing, washing your hands, staying in the house, don't go around crowded areas. You still have to practice those things because your immunity is not even built up to a level that's considered acceptable for a few weeks after you finish that vaccination protocol. So yes, you still, unfortunately for right now,
the mask fee has to continue. Okay. And then, yeah, so you still have to, you know, protect yourself because you want to protect other people too. And again, we don't know how your body is going to react and how much antibodies you're going to develop. And are you going to be a part of the 5% that Pfizer says that you know, 5% of people will probably get COVID-19? It's supposed to be 95% efficacy. So,
and right now they're not testing. I don't think they're testing, and this I'll have to research again, but I don't think they're actually testing the level of antibodies in just the general public like us. If you're in a clinical trial, they're testing them because there are a couple tests that do test your antibody.
Oh, yeah, right. That was a good point.
But as far as we know, they're not testing the general public's antibody titers. So we're basing all this off of the small clinical trials that they have going on right now. So, you know, like, you know, we've discussed, we think it's 5 to 7 months of at least solid immunity. But again, we've only been testing it for what, 8-9 months at the most. We've had these clinical trials. So eventually I think people will, or companies will develop antibody titers to see where we lie. And I think that will help. Yeah, that will help with the distribution aspect of it too, because we've been wondering, well, who should get it, who shouldn't get it. So if you take your antibody titers and see that you're down here, this person's titers are up here, well, then this person is next in line to get the vaccine. So it saves you from giving out that vaccine unnecessarily. And, you know, when it comes to the distribution of something that's so limited right now, that might be something that we start to work towards, getting antibody titers. Just something to throw out there.
You know, another question, I don't think we addressed this earlier, is that I've been getting some messages that, you know, Dr. Kendra, how do you know that the vaccine will work in Black people? So I guess there's a process that it affects different races differently. And, you know, they studied about 85,000 people. And unfortunately, you know, because Black folk, you know, we don't join clinical trials voluntarily. Okay. And again, based on the history of us getting fooled, Tuskegee trial, the basis of Planned Parenthood, you know, I understand our community's skepticism, but out of the 85,000, I believe it was either 7 to 9% of those people were Black. So, you know, so again, that data pool is limited because, you know, it's only, you know, 9 to 7%, 7 to 9%. So again, you know, this is a part of our body, you know, messenger RNA, you know, we're all the same on the inside. I think me and Britton can vouch to that, you know, going, you know, being in the operating room, that we all look the same on the inside. So,
did.
Thought that it fed
You know
differently.
what? I did not get that question, but it's funny because I did read a study that kind of addressed the issue of race, and they said they used 10% of the population. It was, I think, 30,000 people in the study. Because again, these studies are relatively small, but it's about 30,000 people in the study. 10% were Black, and I think 14% were Latina. And they found no differences across any race as to how the vaccine was internalized by the patient or by the study person. There was no differences. They all got it. No, there was no reaction.
That is excellent.
Yeah, there were no funny reactions with Black people versus Latino versus white. They saw no differences among the races, but they did single out that, there is, this race in the study, and they addressed, because I think that has been circulating in our community, in our society right now. This whole
work for us. Yeah. And
the race issue has been a theme in the media recently. And so this one study I saw did kind of specify that there was no differences between the races and how people responded to the vaccine.
Okay, that is I'm going to put that on my IG because I got that. They did a study. I didn't know. They did a study, but we are the same inside. But I understand the skepticism, but I don't want you guys to get confused that because minorities are affected more with COVID-19 for various reasons, comorbid conditions, living conditions, we can't social distance, on and on, doesn't mean that this vaccine is not for us. If anything, I think if you're in the high risk group, it's made for you.
Right.
Like made for us, please.
Absolutely. I have a question. So someone asked me, should you get tested for the virus before getting the vaccine? And the answer to that is, according to the CDC, it's not suggested that you get tested to see if you have COVID or not. If you don't have any contraindications, meaning you're not allergic to any of the ingredients, you don't have any weird anaphylactic reactions to prior vaccines, then it's fair game. You can still get it. They do say if you have an acute infection with COVID, then you should wait that 90 days before you get the vaccine. So, within 90 days, they say most patients don't get reinfected. So they obviously have an immunity for 90 days after an initial infection. So they say if you're acutely infected, just wait until you're no longer sick, no longer having symptoms, you're no longer in isolation, you've been fever-free for 24 hours, and then get the vaccine. And usually a safe bet is to just wait that 90 days and then get the vaccine. But that's according to the CDC.
But I'm thinking if I'm able to get COVID, if my body is susceptible to getting COVID once, it can get it again. So if you have COVID, I think that's incentive to get the vaccination.
Yeah. If you got it once, you're in a high risk of getting it again. So yeah. All right. Do you have any other ones?
I think that's it for now. This is our first live, so I'm excited to see how many people are with us? Is this like IG? I can't see.
I don't even know how you tell. Where is that even?
You know what I mean? And I kind of want you guys to ask questions. If anybody is on here, if they can ask a question, because so we're excited because it's our first one.
So I don't know. I don't know how we tell. I don't see anything yet. I don't see any live viewers. However, we will do this more often. We will definitely put out more plugs and flyers so that people know that this is where we're going to be. And we appreciate those that, came by either live or checking us out after the fact, because we're going to post this on our YouTube channel.
Right.
Post our YouTube channel. So if you don't catch it live, you'll catch it at some point. It's like Netflix. You can watch it when you want to.
Exactly. And we'll keep you guys posted on our second dose. And also, of course, if we get any symptoms or anything weird, we'll keep you guys posted.
Yeah, we'll tell you how our second dose on January 7th, I get my second dose.
Mine is the 9th. Okay, so until next.
Oh, wait a minute. Somebody said, I'm live. I'm listening.
Oh, my God. Really?
Yeah, Tanishu. I don't know how to pronounce it. Tanishu.
Oh, my God. Hey.
Hi. Thanks for checking us out live. So we do have some people watching. Okay, good.
Okay, so can you ask a question so we can see how it
Oh, if
looks?
anyone is live right now and has questions, yeah, let us know before we sign off. If there's anything we can answer for
this
you.
is our first time, so so we can look like seasoned professionals by our next one. I'm excited. Oh, there's a comment. Wait a minute.
Oh, where? I just have one comment. You have a comment?
Okay. I'm live. I'm streaming. Yay. Oh, yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for watching. Thank you so much.
I see your question. You see that too? You see it,
Yeah.
Britton?
There's two,
Okay.
right? I'm live. I'm
Yes,
listening. Thank you, ladies, for the info.
Right. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you for watching.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Okay. Until next time.
All right, y'all.
Doses.